At the time of writing, Shadows of Doubt is currently in early access and just received its first major update, Cheats and Liars. Shadows of Doubt was released onto Steam on April 24, 2023 by developer Coal Powered Games and published by Fireshine Games. The earliest information I have found in the development of the game was on Coal Powered Games' blog in April of 2018, where they outlined the ideas of what eventually became Shadows of Doubt. Shadows of Doubt is a self-proclaimed, procedurally generated, open-world, cyberpunk, detective, immersive sim sandbox set in an alternative reality of a hyper-industrialized 1980s. The setting is of a neon-noir-esque dystopia where the newly elected president is the glorious and definitely not corrupt mega corporation Starch Cola. When you start up a new game, you are given the option to choose between a specifically crafted case and city called the Dead of Night. No, not that one. This is to help introduce the game and its core concepts to new players. Or you have the option to create a fully randomly generated sandbox city. When creating a new city, you have the options to choose the city's name, the size of the city, and the seed for the map. The sizes range from small to very large, and the sizes directly correlate to how many city blocks there may be. This ranges from its smallest map of 3x4 city blocks to a massive 6x5, as well as how many citizens the city will be able to hold at a time. The biggest draw to the game, in my opinion, is the fact that every building in the city is enterable and every room has something to see or has someone living in it. This includes the city's skyscrapers, with upwards of 20 stories to some buildings, as well as every single NPC has their own lives, routines, jobs, friends, and relationships that all work together to simulate a living, breathing world. And eventually, one of the hundreds of NPCs will feel wronged by another in some way that they take matters into their own hands, and they decide that someone isn't making it home for dinner. That is where you come in. You play as a private investigator who works outside the law to take down criminals to help a city sorely lacking in any kind of justice. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This game uses a voxel-based art style that to some may look ugly, but to me it adds so much to the overall charm and visual feel to the game. If you are unaware, voxel art, or voxels, can be thought of as small 3D pixels. Objects, characters, and even the world can be made up of tiny cubes to create a larger piece. Think of 2D pixel art in Minecraft, but on a 3D scale. In this game, all the art assets are made up of these tiny cubes that go together to make up characters, or, as an example, an office chair. I will let smarter people than myself go over the technical aspects of voxel graphics and if they are good or bad, but I just wanted to cover the basics. Cole Jeffries, the developer of Shadows of Doubt, stated on his blog that John Atkinson Grimshaw, as well as, I'm gonna butcher this, Masashi Wakui's art, are both huge inspirations to the overall art style of the game and, of course, Blade Runner's neon cyberpunk style. The game also has those old CRT televisions that play detective shows that seem to be made specifically for this game. I looked around and the general consensus seems to be that these are all original shows or movies made for this game. Please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Now, that leads us into part 2.5. Sounds. The game's audio design and music just ooze with atmosphere. I don't have any personal education when it comes to music or soundtracks, but I know when I hear something great. As soon as you boot up the game, you are hit with the game's stellar soundtrack that has a great blend of neon cyberpunk and old noir. Walking the streets, you hear your detective's shoes click along the cobble roads, the steam vents pouring out of the local 24-hour fast food joint, the overhead clouds rumbling and threatening to downpour upon the city. I said it once, and I will say it again and again. This game has atmosphere. I am a huge sucker for atmosphere in games. Games such as Inside, Limbo, Hollow Knight, Outer Wilds, you name it. Both the audio and visuals work together to make this game look and sound spectacular. Part 3, the game stuff. As I said earlier, you play as a private investigator who works outside the law to solve cases and odd jobs for the citizens of the city, usually whether they like it or not. You'll be walking the street or holed up in a dingy bar or diner when all of a sudden, murder. When one of these murder cases appear, your hand radio will pick up the city's police scanners becoming aware of the incident, usually a passerby who either witnessed the crime or maybe someone coming home to find their partner lying face down in the living room. It is here where the main substance of the game begins. If you can get to the crime scene before the police arrive, you'll be able to assess the scene before it's compromised with muddy boots or fingerprints all over the place. However, if you're too slow and the police arrive first, they'll have the crime scene taped off to the public and will apprehend anyone who attempts to stick their nose where it doesn't belong, and that includes you. The police in the city aren't here to keep the civilians safe or solve crimes. They have essentially become a private security force for the new corporate president, Starch Cola. Their main concerns are to ensure the government's bottom line is not affected and to sweep all the bureaucratic paperwork they would have to do either under the rug or onto poor saps such as yourself. However, that doesn't stop them from giving anyone, including you, a shit kicking that will land you in the police medical bed for a few days if you get in their way. If you're too late and the scene's cordoned off to the public, you'll have to get a little crafty. Because this game has immersive sim elements, there are a couple of interesting ways for you to get where you need to. One option is to find a ventilation shaft and worm your way into the victim's apartment without anyone being the wiser. Now, once you're inside, the investigation begins. I personally always start with the stiff. You gotta get their prints, inspect inspect their wounds, and gauge roughly their time of death. This is where another major aspect of the game comes in. Every great detective has to have a corkboard for conspiracies or murders. In Shadows of Doubt, anything you pick up or read could be potential evidence to be placed on the board. You never know, maybe the Stiff's burger receipt from the night before could be the smoking gun in this case. A good detective, however, knows how to trim the fat and only keep key evidence on the board. After assessing the victim, we now need to figure out who our John or Jane Doe is, and best case scenario, we find their wallet with an identifying picture. While rooting around in their wallet, we may find out they're an organ donor, their social security number, credit cards, you name it. A good piece of evidence, however, is any workplace information we may gather. After rooting around the rest of the apartment, we may notice some writing on the walls, a crumpled piece of paper, or maybe an odd child's toy at the scene near the body, and if we're really lucky, some prints that don't match anyone who lives in the apartment. In Shadows of Doubt, all murder cases have an identifying calling card at the scene of the crime, which can help identify and break down which type of case we're looking at. After collecting any and all possible evidence and arranging them on our evidence board, it is time to start narrowing down our list of suspects. This is where the majority of the investigations take place. From here on, you are free to investigate in any direction you please to find the perpetrator. Maybe you try to comb over the CCTV footage around the time of the murder, or maybe you try your hand at their personal address book. Most murder cases tend to be between friends, colleagues, or even acquaintances. You could even try sleuthing around the victim's place of work, maybe a coworker trying to murder their way up the corporate ladder. Or even if all else fails, maybe you can get lucky and find a passerby who possibly saw someone who looks suspicious and they lead you right to the perpetrator. These are just some of the possibilities Shadows of Doubt gives the player in their quest for finding justice. After you have narrowed down your list of suspects and you find the person you believe to be the murderer, you can accuse them of said murder and see their reaction. Everyone will react differently and sometimes with hostility. However, when you're ready to close the case, you will go to the resolution form you had to pick up at City Hall and fill out the form stating who the murderer is, where they live, the murder weapon, and what evidence you have tying them to the scene of the crime. Also, for an added bonus, if you had handcuffed the criminal for the police, you get a nice little bonus for doing their jobs for them. After the case, you are rewarded with a decent chunk of crows and social reputation points. You may be asking, so what? What can I do with the money? Well, first of all, a copious amounts of cigarettes. Please let us smoke in this game, Cole. I'm trying to develop an addiction here. Secondly, your character's not some robot that runs off starch cola energy drinks. You need a steady supply of food and drinks to be able to solve cases at an efficient rate and take a few hits from less than friendly people. Your character can also become wet and cold, both affecting your overall health. Look, you don't want to be chasing a suspect soaking wet and take a slip on a marble floor and find yourself laid out on a medical bed while the suspect has slipped from your grasp. Throughout the city, you can eat, drink, and hang out at various bars, diners, and restaurants. And at these various hubs, you can find public phones and city directories with phone numbers to everyone who owns property in the city. Alongside is a public notice board that people from around the city can leave jobs for anyone to take. These jobs range from finding a certain person and wrecking their home to help the contractor get revenge. Or maybe someone believes their partner is being unfaithful and you need to confirm their suspicions. Some jobs have you tailing suspects and collecting pictures of shady deals, or even committing corporate espionage and selling secrets from one company to another. Now, if you're really lucky, you will be rewarded with a sync disc. Sync discs in this world are cyber enhancements. These range from something as simple as making yourself taller, or maybe a short king is more your style. Another is maybe getting a discount on all purchases, or increasing your likelihood of obtaining information from someone without having to grease their palms. These range from low-end, occasionally useful perks to top-range enhancements, like being able to gauge the correct height, age, and shoe size of someone just from looking at a picture of them. Or getting an enhancement that allows your medical fees to be paid for you in full, to even increasing your physical abilities to kick down doors in one fell swoop, or artificially increasing your punch strength so that when anyone decides to go toe-to-toe with you, they learn the hard way what a punch from a roided out Mike Tyson feels like. Now, all that sounds good, but what is the end goal? Why am I putting myself on the line for a city that probably doesn't care from the next poor sap found in a ditch? Well, other than the sense of pride and accomplishment for solving an especially tricky murder case, that's where the big purchases come in. Around the city on notice boards, you can sometimes find an apartment for sale. Usually it's a basement level tiny apartment that is in terrible condition and probably has some less than favorable odors. However, still probably a better deal than renting a property in downtown Toronto. Occasionally, you'll get lucky and find some bigwig decides to move out of the city or gets whacked themselves and their apartment becomes available. These are usually on the 15th floor and up, ranging from 20,000 to 60,000 crows, with some of the best views of the city, rain or shine. If you save up for any of these apartments, you'll walk into your beautiful brand new home and it's empty. Don't worry though, this game has a surprisingly good decorating mode that allows you to place anything you would find in any of the apartments you've been breaking into and investigating in. These decorations include bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchens, studies, and living room furnitures. It feels similar to base building in Subnautica, and being able to place anything anywhere allows you to fully customize the space to your exact specifics. Do you want your own detective study while noir music plays over the gramophone while you're looking over the rainy city? You can do it. One of my favorite memories was of an apartment that had no lights as you entered into the hallway that led into a living room, and the apartment had no bathroom that I could see. However, the living room had a ventilation shaft that led from my apartment to my neighbor's bathroom. So every time I had to shower after rummaging through the trash cans and smelling worse than Venom Snake after a multi-day operation, I would use the vent to sneak into my neighbor's bathroom and use their showers and toiletries to clean myself up, hop on their sink, and jump into their ceiling vent to go home, without my neighbors ever knowing why their showers were left on and their toilets are clogged. I did that for weeks, until eventually I wanted to put some wall decorations up in the entryway of my apartment. So I installed a new light fixture and come to find out that there was a mysterious door there. I was super confused to say the least, and when I entered, I found a decently sized bathroom just waiting to be furnished. Now, I told this story to some of my friends, and they thought it was some of the funniest accidental storytelling that they had heard. This game just oozes story potential, similar to games like Sims, Dwarf Fortress, Crusader Kings, and the list goes on. Now, there are many other smaller features. I could easily spend the next 2 hours going over every little detail, but I will let you all experience the small things that this game does to really sell the feeling of you being a detective in this neon noir man-made dystopian. Conclusion. I hope it came across in the video, but Shadows of Doubt truly blew me away the first 60 or so hours of gameplay. I was constantly learning all the cool little tricks to help solve cases the game doesn't outright tell you about. Things like being able to peek under doors or ram into them to get inside quickly, or that every workplace has the employee records with their address and fingerprints in them. This game has so many little tricks that every time you figure one out or see someone using one, you get the feeling like there's still so much more to learn. And that just makes games like this have that magic spark a little bit longer than most current AAA games in the industry. Thank you very much if you made it this far into the video. It's the first time I've ever written a script or even recorded for a YouTube video for people to see. I spend a lot of time playing video games and talking my friends' ears off about hundreds of games a year. Some of my friends will see a game and ask me if I've played it and if it's worth it. So I figured I would dip my toe into content creation and put my video game addiction to some kind of creative outlet that maybe even one person can leave this video with something learned or a want to try out this game. I have no clue what is required to grow a YouTube channel, but I spend enough time on the site to know that any type of watch time and engagement really helps out. So if you enjoyed this video in any way or know someone who might enjoy this type of content, please share this video or leave a sub or even just a like. Thank you all very much, and I'll see you next time. Peace.